So there's a couple things I want to talk about today, and they're different threads, but they're all kind of interwoven. And they all center around, should you form an LLC? When should you form an LLC? Why should you form an LLC? And can you operate as a sole proprietor without ever forming any other type of legal business entity? I've known many freelancers who set up an LLC or look at incorporating as the first point of starting their business, as if they're not in business until they form this legal entity. Fact of the matter is, you're actually in business if you are in transactional relationships with clients, if you have a profit motive, if you are seeking clients, if you are spending time, investing time and your own funds into building a business. You are in business. You don't need an LLC to prove profit motive. You don't need an LLC or to incorporate to prove that you are in business. There's also the idea that freelancers aren't business owners. Freelancers are independent people who work independently of their clients and are often mistreated by their clients. And of course, Freelance Road Trip is set out to blow that idea out of the water, because fact of the matter is that if you are in transactional relationships where you are giving value and receiving value, you are giving creative content, creative work, strategy, design, copywriting, illustration, photography in exchange for financial compensation. That's a transactional relationship. You're in business. Therefore, you need to assume a business owner mindset, put the mechanics of running a business into place, establish systems and policies so that they run smoothly. They cause your business to gain momentum, and you can focus on doing the creative work for your clients. So the topic for this episode is why freelancers need more than an LLC. I'm also going to go into some confusion that's out there in the marketplace in regard to workers, labor, employees, independent contractors, because there's a lot of murky, mucky, confused thinking out there. So my hope is to allay some of that and settle things once and for all. If you haven't already figured it out, you're listening to the Freelance Road Trip podcast, and we're located at the intersection of inspired creativity and common business sense. And we talk about everything that they don't teach you in design school, but should if you want to build a career and a life as an independent creative. I'm Alvalin Lundgren, founder of Alvalin Creative, which is my strategic brand design consultancy. Through that, I design influence and draw attention, helping businesses, organizations, and authors build their platforms through my 4-part branding framework. I also founded Freelance Road Trip, which is an online education platform designed to help shift your freelancing into high gear without stalling out. I created Freelance Road Trip to help other creatives navigate smoothly and avoid the problems I ran into in building my own business. One thing I discovered in that process was that the problems that I faced are common to freelancers everywhere, and you've most likely experienced them too. But with knowledge and confidence that comes with that knowledge, you can power through and perhaps even sidestep many problems altogether. And here in the podcast, I share proven strategies and practical answers that will help you transform your creative drive into a thriving independent business so that you can accelerate your creative and material growth. So whether you're just starting out or you're in need of a tune-up, if you're a creativepreneur who wants to build a business and life doing what you love because working for someone else just doesn't do it for you, you're in the right place. Welcome to the show. This is episode 118, and the show notes are at freelanceroadtrip.com/show 118, show 118. So why do you need more than an LLC? Business is actually an amalgamation of mindset, mechanics, mission, and marketing. Freelance creatives, illustrators, designers, photographers, copywriters, people who operate within that space serving clients don't always have the business mindset or the business skills they need to actually succeed at what they're doing over the long term. That's where Freelance Road Trip comes in. And as I said in the intro, my mission is to help my fellow creatives who are independent build, maintain, and thrive in their freelance work. Because none of us really want to work for anyone else. That's why we freelance. We are not employees. We are not W-2 employees earning a paycheck and getting benefits. We are 1099 creative partners with our clients. There's an organization known as Freelancers Union, and it's not made up of just freelance creatives. It's all sorts of freelancers. And Freelancers Union, which I call FU, and it calls itself FU, is one of those entities that has formed a message that I believe is confusing. And it's confusing a lot of freelancers. Freelancers are self-employed people. And being self-employed, we become responsible for basically for everything. How we run our business. We are responsible for the choices for how we're going to cover our healthcare costs through insurance or through need-sharing organizations, or we're going to be self-insured. We're going to manage our time so that we don't burn out. We may not get paid leave or paid vacation, but we can certainly self-fund time off when we want it. We don't need to ask anybody's permission because we are self-employed. We are the owners of our own businesses, and we are the captains of our own ships. We are in the driver's seat. We are not passengers in the back seat of a corporation or another business that we're working for. Freelancers Union and its parent, Working Today, Inc., another nonprofit, seems to believe that freelancers should be the same as W-2 employees in terms of receiving benefits, minimum pay, things like that. So they're advocating legislation and they're doing lobbying efforts to promote things that are actually antithetical to the purpose and the, if you will, the basis, the philosophy of freelancing. Freelancers Union posted an article on their blog titled, "Why You Should Consider an LLC the Right Choice for Your Freelance Business." In that article, there's a section in which the author, and the author is Working Today, Inc., or workingtoday.org, states that if you form an LLC, you won't be in danger of being misclassified under current labor laws, especially AB 5. And AB 5 I've talked about a lot over the past 2 or 3 years. It went into effect in California in January of 2020. It's a bill authored by Lorena Gonzalez. It was backed by quite a number of labor unions. The legislation was funded and backed by a number of labor unions in California. And it's basically devastated the freelance economy in California, putting a lot of people out of business, putting a lot of small businesses and organizations who relied on independent contractors for certain services and aspects of their business, totally devastated that economy in California. A lot of people shut down their businesses. A lot of people left California. California, because of its policies, has even lost a seat in the House of Representatives. Not every piece of legislation is a good idea. AB 5 had to be amended to allow over 100 exemptions, different types of professions exempted. And it was kind of a willy-nilly type of exemption and didn't make sense. For instance, graphic designers were exempted, but photographers were not. That doesn't make sense. They had to write new legislation, AB 2257, to make up for the shortcomings of AB 5, but it's still turmoil in California. Lawsuits, ballot measures, appeals. It's crazy. And they want to take this nationally through the PRO Act, which is currently, as I understand, enjoying a third effort in Congress, and also through an independent contractor ruling that the Department of Labor is considering instituting. So AB 5 presented myriad problems for independent contractors, freelancers. Now, in full transparency, if you've listened to this podcast for a while and you haven't yet figured this out, I'll just state it outright. I believe that freelancer and union are contradictions in terms. They are antithetical to each other. Independent contractors are independent and therefore not subject to an employer's oversight, and therefore, being self-determined, don't need to organize into a union and should not be misclassified as employees of their clients. One of the problems that unions have with independent contractors is that they cannot, by law, be organized into a union. So along comes Freelancers Union and WorkingToday.org wanting to organize freelancers into a pseudo-union to fight for workers' rights. And that's another issue that I have, is that am I a worker or am I an expert in my field? Am I a laborer or am I selling expertise, creative thinking, problem solving? What am I? What is the value of creative work? What is the value of creating IP, intellectual property, for our clients? Are we workers and laborers punching a 9-to-5 time clock with half an hour break for lunch and 2 15-minute breaks in addition to that during an 8-hour workday and getting overtime? Or are we self-determined, independent professionals? What are we? If you want benefits, go get a W-2 job. If you want somebody to take care of you, go get a W-2 job. If you want to be self-determined and you want to take care of yourself, there are many low-cost alternatives to the usual employee benefits that are available to solopreneurs, including healthcare and retirement programs. Professional associations, certain trade associations, especially nowadays after the lockdowns and the emergency orders have been lifted, there's so many opportunities and alternatives to the standard expected benefit packages that are affordable for freelancers. A very long time ago, I was president of the Los Angeles chapter of the Graphic Artists Guild, which is a national organization. The national organization was campaigning to unionize, originally under one union and then made a second attempt under SAG-AFTRA, and neither effort was successful, mainly due, if I recall correctly, to the number of freelancers who were guild members who preferred independence over union restrictions. To date, the Graphic Artists Guild remains a trade association and is not a union nor union affiliated. That said, I do allow that I have some bias regarding unions and freelancing and Freelancers Union. In the article on the Freelancers Union blog, the writer describes the general benefits of forming an LLC compared to operating as a sole proprietor or incorporating. And the author makes the claim, and this is a quote, "However, AB 5 includes exemptions for certain types of businesses, including those that operate as an LLC. However, AB 5 includes exemptions for certain types of businesses, including those that operate as an LLC. If you're a self-employed individual who operates as an LLC, you may be exempt from the provisions of AB 5. This can provide additional protection for your business and help you avoid potentially costly changes." Well, let's look at that statement and break it down a little bit. What is the author claiming? The author is essentially claiming that if you form an LLC, you're exempt from the provisions of AB 5. But the fact is that AB 5 does not provide exemptions for LLCs. It doesn't provide exemptions for having a business license. It doesn't provide exemptions for operating as a sole proprietor or incorporating. It does provide exemptions for certain professions and was forced to after it became very clear very quickly that it was an unjust piece of legislation. So AB 5 does not provide exemptions because a freelancer has formed an LLC. It's based on a 3-point test known as the ABC test, which governs the working relationship between you and your client. It doesn't govern the freelancer's legal business structure, which is what an LLC or a sole proprietorship are. It's true that there was an increase in LLC formations in 2020 when AB 5 was enacted in California. Forming an LLC has no bearing on the actuality of how a freelancer performs their work. Point A, the worker has to be free both contractually and in practice from control and direction on how to perform their work. In other words, your client cannot tell you how, what, where, when to perform your work. Point B, the worker's service, notice that they say worker. The worker's service is outside the hiring party's usual services. That means that if you are a photo retoucher, you cannot work for a photographer without being employed by the photographer, because it's assumed that the photographer has to retouch their photos. So if they hire somebody to do that, if they subcontract or outsource that service, then they have to actually pay that service as a W-2 employee and provide all the W-2 employee benefits that are due under the law. That doesn't work for a lot of small business owners and micro business owners because it's hugely expensive to have employees. And then point C is the worker has an independently established trade, occupation, or business of the same nature as the work performed. So point A and point C are fairly easy to address. B becomes the problem for a lot of freelance creatives. And the thing about the ABC test is that the freelancer has to meet all three criteria. Not 2 out of 3 or any one of these criteria, but all three in order to be classified as an independent contractor. If you miss on one point, you're in danger of being misclassified. So note that none of the 3 points have anything to do with your legal business structure. So whether you're a sole proprietor or you've incorporated or you've formed an LLC, and even if you have employees, which means you're not necessarily an independent contractor, you are not free from the ABC test. Now, this is right now confined to California and a couple other states that have enacted their own legislation, but they're trying to bring it national so that independent contracting is essentially outlawed. Freelancing is essentially outlawed. Seasonal workers, that's essentially outlawed. Side gigs, essentially outlawed. This in the face of a multi-billion-dollar freelance economy, where forming an LLC may be helpful in regards to AB5 is in the C part of the ABC test, where you are engaged in a regularly performed, regularly established trade or profession. So forming a legal business entity, and especially if it's an LLC or a corporation, will help define you as being in business, doing business transactions. That's where the LLC will help. But the main issue that freelancers have with AB5 is the B test, that you can't do anything that your client could do for themselves, essentially. So AB5 does exempt certain types of professions because the law was so poorly crafted that it had to be amended and then clarified later through AB 2257. And AB 2257 was drafted and passed in California ostensibly to fix the problems with AB5, but it didn't really fix a lot of problems. If the spirit of AB5 becomes part of national labor law, whether via legislation through the PRO Act or through a Department of Labor ruling, it's not likely that any exemptions will be allowed. Therefore, it's up to the freelancer to make appropriate shifts in how they work with clients to ensure they don't end up misclassified. Getting back to the Freelancers Union article, to suggest that forming an LLC may provide protection from AB5 and national labor law scrutiny is harmful if freelancers believe the article. The author is actually doing a disservice to creative freelancers by misrepresenting what the law actually states. And while misrepresenting is a common practice these days and people need to do their own research to verify sources and facts, common practice doesn't determine good ethics. Toward the end of the article, the author states, with recent legislation like AB5, it's more important than ever for self-employed individuals to consider forming an LLC to protect their business and their livelihood. Again, this is misleading since it ties AB5 to the protection provided by an LLC. One can write an article that's full of accurate information, but if one portion of the article misrepresents the facts, the entire article becomes suspect. Think about that. One more thing to note is that the author was also promoting Zen Business. ZenBusiness.com offers easy and inexpensive LLC filings and discounts to members of Freelancers Union. And by the way, to join Freelancers Union, all you need to do is subscribe to their mailing list and they will count you as a member. You're probably aware of the havoc and devastation that AB5 has created across all industries in California. And again, it's contributed to the exit of thousands of small businesses, solopreneurs, creativepreneurs, and organizations from the state to other parts of the United States. And it's caused countless freelancers, gig workers, contractors, etc., to close their businesses. For sure, it's not AB5 alone that's caused the mass exodus from California, resulting in a lost seat in the House because it has less population. But the law has contributed. It's affected freelancers, small businesses, and nonprofits adversely. So, dear freelancer, do not form an LLC because you expect that doing so will protect you from misclassification under AB5 and pending Department of Labor rulings. Put that aside entirely. Instead, form an LLC for the right reasons because of the legal protections, asset protections, and tax benefits. The advantage of forming an LLC, which, by the way, stands for Limited Liability Company, is to protect your personal assets and limit personal liability should legal action be taken against you because of something that occurred in your business. An LLC is very useful as a business structure because with it you will have less corporate governance requirements compared to other entities. If you're thinking of forming an LLC as a way to bypass AB5, it's a good idea to talk with a labor law attorney. If you're going to form an LLC because of the liability benefits, you probably don't need to talk to an attorney, but it's a good idea to have an understanding of everything that the LLC entails, how it's different from a sole proprietorship, and how it compares to a sole proprietorship in terms of reporting. As a creative educator, I do not provide legal or financial advice. I provide information, and part of that information is find an attorney who understands freelancing and small business, who understands copyright law, who understands intellectual property, who understands LLCs, sole proprietorships, and corporations. Book some time, ask your questions, get your questions answered. I'm providing you with general information, not legal advice, so speak with a legal professional. So form an LLC for the right reasons. Understand also that you can operate all your career as a sole proprietor without any problems. But if you're operating as a sole proprietor, make sure you're filing as a sole proprietor. You have your business license. You've done your fictitious business statement. You've done your DBA. And you have the appropriate business licenses to do business in your city, county, and or state. When you form an LLC, that is usually going to be a Secretary of State thing. So you file with the Secretary of State, and there are annual fees. California, where I am, by the way, is one of the most expensive states to form an LLC in. As a sole proprietor, your personal and your business assets are fair game if somebody sues you. An LLC puts a gate. It's a protection. It separates your personal from your business assets. That's one of the advantages. That's one of the reasons why you would want to form an LLC. Again, it's not a requirement because you can be in business as a sole proprietor your whole life long. One of the ways, by the way, to avoid any sort of lawsuit is to perform your work with all due diligence when working with clients, to establish good working relationships with your clients, to work with the right kinds of clients that you're best suited to serve, and to work with contracts and have business systems in place. And this is what Freelance Road Trip is all about. Freelance Road Trip was formed to provide education and training and mindset shift from, hey, I'm a creative and now I want to make a living from my artwork, to, hey, I'm a business owner. I'm the owner of a creative business serving clients and solving their problems. It's a mindset shift. That mindset shift has to be made first and foremost. And then you put that into practice in terms of your mechanics and your marketing and your mission. What I call the 4 M's of freelancing and what I teach on in the Freelance Road Trip program. The program, by the way, is opening up for enrollment soon. So if you're intrigued, if you want to learn how to address problems before they come up, get on my mailing list. Go to freelanceroadtrip.com/newsletter, and you'll get articles and tips, industry news, and opportunities landing in your inbox a couple times a month. So thanks for listening. This has been the Freelance Road Trip Podcast, the intersection of inspired creativity and common business sense, so that you can accelerate your freelance business. It's where you get the street smarts they don't teach you in design school. And I hope that what I've shared with you is helpful and also meaningful and that you can take it and run with it. I hope it's caused you to think differently. If there's one particular tip or insight you found especially useful, please let me know. Send an email to connect@freelanceroadtrip.com or connect with me on Twitter @freelancetrip or on Instagram @freelanceroadtrip. And meanwhile, may you prosper in all things and be in health as your soul prospers, and I'll see you on the road.